Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode in a new miniseries I'll be doing on how to survive in the new survival mode for Fallout 4. Now, I know survival mode has been out on PC for a while, first in beta and then officially for a whole week before us console players got to get a hold of it, so I'm sure some of the information in these videos isn't going to be new to a lot of you. However, I know that some of you, especially console players, haven't taken the plunge yet, or maybe you're brand new to Fallout 4 and want to know if starting out your very first playthrough on survival mode would be worth it. Since the update was released last week, I've been spending as much free time as I can playing around with and testing the new features and coming up with a list of tips and tricks for future videos. Now, at first I was going to make a sort of 10 quick tips for survival mode kind of video, but the more I delved into it, the more I had to say about each aspect, and I realized my first idea was too basic. However, I didn't also want to overwhelm all of you with a 40-minute video either, so I decided to break it down into categories and have a video for each category. The definitive guide to survival mode, if you will. So there are going to be 7 episodes in this series altogether, I think. This one will be about your starting stats, if you're starting survival mode with a new character, and also I'll be talking about some helpful perks that you'll want to take early on or as soon as possible. In future episodes, which I'm going to try to get out as quickly as I can, I'll be talking about managing your thirst, managing your hunger, managing fatigue, managing your carrying capacity, combat and combat avoidance, and managing your health and fitness. And like I said, I'm going to be trying to release these as soon as I can so you don't have to wait too long for the next episode. Alright, now that's out of the way, let's get on with this episode. First of all, the big question I've seen a lot of people ask: should I start survival mode with a new character or just apply it to my level 150 character? Well, that's totally up to you. It goes without saying that it will be harder with a new character because you won't have all the overpowered armor and weapons and stockpiled supplies yet. And finding those things and keeping a hold of them is a lot harder in survival mode. So if you want a real challenge, then yes, start with a new character. However, if you're skeptical of survival mode and you just want to try it out to see if you like it, without going to the trouble of making a new character and starting the game over, then go ahead and try it on your overpowered tank. Keep in mind, however, once you switch back from survival mode to a lower difficulty, you won't be able to return to survival mode again with that character if you change your mind. Another question that gets asked a lot is, should I play on survival in my very first playthrough of the game? And I have to say that depends on your level of patience and willingness to be brutally punished in a brand new game. Survival mode makes the game hard. Even harder for someone not used to Fallout. If you're unsure where you stand, then do a test. Start your first game on very hard difficulty, then force yourself to never fast travel and to save only when you're near a bed. If you can do that without throwing your computer or console across the room, then you might be okay on survival mode. Now let's talk about your starting stats and some helpful perks. Your starting stats can have a big impact on your ability to survive in survival mode. Theoretically, any type of build can reach the end of the game in this mode, however some will definitely be easier than others. For instance, a sneaky sharpshooter who avoids direct combat will have a greater chance at surviving than a melee character. What this video is not going to do is detail all the potential builds you could make and how to get through survival mode using them. That would take way too long and is really just beyond the scope of this series. This series is about the best and most efficient way to survive the game, and so I will talk about the build that I think can best accomplish that. Obviously, this is my personal opinion and the way I personally enjoyed playing survival mode the most. You may have found a different build more viable for your playthrough. If so, I would love to hear about it in the comments and any other tips for survival mode you've learned in your experience. The special stats for my brand new survival mode character fresh out of the vault without any bobbleheads or gear were 3 strength, 3 perception, 5 endurance, 6 charisma, 5 intelligence, 4 agility, and 2 luck. Now I'll break those down and tell you why I chose those particular numbers. You may be thinking, only 3 strength? But carry weight has been decreased in survival mode. Won't you need extra strength? Answer: yes, you will, definitely. However, fresh out of the vault, you won't so much. And I would rather put those points into a stat that is more immediately useful, like endurance. Once you feel like you have an extra perk to spend later down the line, then by all means go ahead and invest 1 or 2 into strength. In a future episode on how to manage your carry weight, I'll go into more detail on this, so keep an eye out for that one. For perception, I chose 3, and then with the perception bobblehead in the Museum of History, which you can get within the first 5 levels, puts it up to perception 4, which isn't too bad, and it will allow you to get Locksmith, which I think is essential for any build, really, if you want to get into all those locked containers and rooms to find the good loot. And finding the good loot is even more important in survival mode. I chose 5 endurance because endurance is very important in survival mode. Endurance is your overall physical fitness and also determines how much action points you have. The higher your endurance, the better you'll be able to combat fatigue and illness, which are constant concerns in survival mode. Consider it the same as your basic immunity to disease and illness in real life. The higher your natural immunity, the less likely you are to get sick, while others who have low immunity get sick more often. I know that's very basic, but you get the idea. Higher endurance also gives you more action points to use when sprinting, and as I'll talk about in another episode, being able to run away fast and far is also very important. Some of you may be thinking that 6 charisma is a waste of points, since charisma has nothing to do with surviving, and you'd be totally right. But unfortunately, Bethesda has made it so you can't craft workbenches without local leader rank 2, which you need charisma 6 to get. And you may find it very helpful to craft cooking stations at settlements, since a lot of them don't come with one already on site. Also, with the reduced carrying capacity of you and your companions, you'll find yourself wanting to unload junk at your settlements way more often, and without fast travel, it's difficult to run all the way back to Sanctuary when you're in South Boston and you've reached your junk hauling capacity. So, it's great to get local leaders so you can establish supply lines and share resources between settlements. Even if you're not into settlement building a whole lot, this is still a useful thing to do, because settlements share all crafting supplies, and that includes food and water. So, you'll be able to use those cooking ingredients at any settlement cooking station, even if you don't have a garden at each one. Also, having 6 charisma lets you pass most speech checks, which gives experience points and potentially way more caps, and we all want more of that, right? For intelligence, I chose 5 because it was the highest number I could give it after allotting most to endurance, charisma, and agility. And I also wanted access to the Scrapper perk. You want to have as much intelligence as you can get, since intelligence determines the number of experience points you earn, so the more you have, the faster you level. You can take the Idiot Savant perk with Intelligence 1 and level very quickly if you want to, but I personally never take this perk, so I haven't been able to test it in survival mode. I'm not sure how survival mode's new intelligence debuffs affect that, so if you guys know, then leave a comment below, since I'm sure there are others who would like to know too. I put 4 into Agility and then used the special book in Sanctuary to make it 5. Agility affects your number of action points in VATS, and your ability to sneak. Since I wanted a sneaky character who uses VATS, this was important. Being able to stay out of sight and kill your enemies without getting surrounded is very important if you want to stay alive in survival mode. The number 1 rule for survival mode is don't get hit. And this is easier to accomplish with high sneak and accuracy in VATS. 5 Agility also gives you access to the Mr. Sandman and Action Boy perks, and these are some very powerful perks that any sneak-based character should take, whether in survival mode or not. Last of all, I put 2 points into Luck. Luck has some pretty good perks, but most of them are far down on the perk chart. And for a survival character, I couldn't justify spending the points early in the game. 2 Luck gets you Fortune Finder and Scrounger, and after that you need Luck 6 and higher to get the other good ones. Later on down the line, once you feel like you have extra perks to spend, then investing some in Luck might be a good idea, especially for sneak-based characters. So these are the basic stats and perks a good sneaky survival character should start out with, in my opinion. A few others that you should get as soon as possible are a Lone Wanderer, which reduces the amount of damage you take by 15 and then 30% with the first 2 ranks, and increases the amount of damage you do by 25% with rank 3. The first 2 ranks also increase your carrying capacity by 50 and 100 respectively. So this is very helpful with survival mode's greatly reduced carrying capacity. Also, even though you can't have a companion with you in order to take advantage of this perk, dog meat is actually exempt from this rule, and so you can take him with you. Another very valuable perk for survival mode is Adamantium Skeleton. You need 7 in endurance to get it, but with the increased damage from enemies, this could really be worth spending the points on, since in survival mode there is no surviving stepping on a landmine or getting hit with a grenade or Molotov. With all 3 ranks of Adamantium Skeleton, your limb damage is completely eliminated. Putting points into both Armorer and Gun Nut are essential for almost any build, but even more so in survival. Especially Armorer, because you'll want to be able to craft as much protection as you can, as quickly as you can, to keep yourself from dying. Another great perk is Demolition Expert. Putting at least 2 ranks in this will gain you a throwing arc for grenades, which is so handy, since accidentally throwing a Molotov at the railing in front of you is very easy to do without the throwing arc, and making a mistake like that will kill you instantly in survival mode. Demolition Expert requires Perception 5, so if you use my build, you'll need to add 1 more rank to Perception to get it. This perk is also really great for making overpowered grenades that can easily deal with large groups of enemies, especially if you're low on ammo. Science and Chemist are 2 great perks to take. You need Science to mod energy weapons and power armor, and also to gain access to a lot of robot mods in the Automatron DLC. Chemist is important if you want to be able to craft your own meds like antibiotics. You can also buy these, but they're expensive. You need Intelligence 6 to get Science, and Intelligence 7 to get Chemist. So, if these are super important to you straight out of the vault, then plan your build accordingly. So those were some of my favorite perks, and the ones I think would suit a survival playthrough. Let me know in the comments if you think I missed any essential ones, and which ones are your favorites. Now, on to some that I think are pretty useless, and you shouldn't waste precious perk points on, especially early in the game. Lead Belly lets you take less radiation from eating or drinking, and maxed out, you take no radiation. While this sounds great at first glance, it's actually a huge waste of a perk, since you'll rarely even have to eat or drink anything that contains radiation. There's so much fresh meat you can cook that you don't have to eat irradiated packaged foods, and purified water isn't as hard to get as some people would have you believe. Even if you are forced to eat or drink something that's irradiated, it gives you such a small amount of radiation damage that it's barely noticeable. You're better off saving your perk point and just eating healthier foods. With Aquaboy, you no longer take radiation damage while swimming, and you can breathe underwater. With rank 2, you become totally undetectable while swimming. Now, I might get some flack for saying this since I know a lot of people really like this perk, but I think it's a waste of a perk point. Unless you're planning on doing a ton of underwater exploration, there's really no need to spend so much time in water to make this perk valid. And you can eat Mirelurk cakes to breathe underwater for 30 minutes. How much more time are you going to spend down there all at once anyway? For me, this is one of those frivolous perks you take when you're level 100 and you've already taken all the essential ones and explored the entire map and need something new to do. So let's go explore under the ocean now. Rad Resistant increases your resistance to rads, with a maximum of plus 30 radiation resistance. This to me is pathetic and useless. Plus 30 radiation resistance is nothing, and you have to waste 3 perk points to get it. You get 1050 radiation resistance from basic T45 power armor. Rad X gives you plus 100 radiation resistance, and you don't have to waste a perk point to use it. Radiation exposure is not a big deal in Fallout 4 like it was in 3 and even New Vegas. Unless you're going into the glowing sea, swimming your way across the map, or taking on a whole mob of children of Adam, there's really not a lot of other places to get a ton of radiation damage. And in those cases, just wear power armor or a hazmat suit and save your perk points for more useful things. Cannibal is a perk that lets you feed on human and humanoid corpses to restore health. Now, unless you're using it for role-playing purposes, this perk is pretty much useless. There are just way too many ways to restore health in this game. You just don't need this. Ghoulish causes radiation to restore some of your lost health, and at rank 3, some feral ghouls will randomly become friendly. Yeah, whatever, like I wouldn't just shoot it in the face anyway. Who cares if radiation restores some health? Not enough to make it worth the perk point. Just eat a steak, for crying out loud. Alright everyone, I think that about wraps up this episode. I know it will probably be the least interesting of all of them, but I thought it was a necessary part of the series and should come first, since choosing your stats are the first decisions you have to make in the game. I hope this video was helpful to you. If it was, please give it a like, and remember, let me know in the comments if I missed anything important. And I would also love to know what kind of builds you're currently playing or planning on playing in survival mode. I'll be getting the next episode of this series out as soon as possible, so stay tuned for that, as well as for more general Fallout 4 tips and tricks videos and my Fallout 4 Let's Play. Also, my new Uncharted 4 Let's Play. Super excited about that. That's it for now, guys. Remember to play safe, play nice, and have fun. I'll see you later.